The email arrived like a beacon in the academic wilderness, an invitation to join Project Chimera. It was a highly classified, privately funded research initiative, shrouded in secrecy but whispered about in elite scientific circles as the next frontier in biological engineering. For me, Dr. Eris Thorne, a young geneticist struggling for funding and recognition, it was more than just a job offer. It was a golden ticket. The facility was deep in a remote, undisclosed location, a sprawling complex of gleaming chrome and sterile white labs, nestled amidst a desolate, windswept landscape. It felt like stepping into the future. My initial days were exhilarating. The team was composed of brilliant, driven minds from across the globe. Resources were limitless. The work itself initially focused on advanced cellular regeneration and genetic manipulation for therapeutic purposes, a noble pursuit. We were told our goal was to unlock the secrets of life itself, to cure diseases, to push the boundaries of human potential. The air crackled with intellectual energy, and I felt a sense of purpose I'd never known. The facility was self-contained, with living quarters, recreational areas, and a tight-knit community. We were encouraged to focus solely on the work, free from outside distractions. It felt like a scientific utopia, but the isolation began to settle in. Communication with the outside world was strictly limited, ostensibly for security. Our personal devices were confiscated upon arrival, replaced with secure, internal-only communicators. We were told it was standard protocol for sensitive research. Then came the whispers. Not literal whispers at first, but a growing unease. Strange, low-frequency hums that vibrated through the floor late at night. The occasional distant, guttural sound that no one could quite identify, always dismissed as structural settling or equipment malfunction. My colleague, Dr. Lena Petrova, a brilliant neuroscientist, started to seem different. She became withdrawn, her usual sharp wit replaced by a haunted look in her eyes. She'd jump at sudden noises, and I'd sometimes catch her staring blankly at walls as if listening to something only she could hear. When I asked if she was all right, she'd just offer a strained smile and say, "Just tired, Eris. The work here is intense." But it was more than fatigue, it was fear. The perfect facade of Project Chimera was beginning to show its first unsettling cracks. If the chilling start of Project Chimera has already piqued your curiosity, make sure to hit that like button right now. The whispers became more pronounced. I started hearing them too. Faint rhythmic thuds and a low, almost animalistic growl emanating from the lower restricted levels of the facility. Areas marked Biocontainment, Level 5, Access Only. Our team was never allowed near those sections. When I inquired, I was met with curt dismissals about experimental animal testing or high-security waste disposal. But the sounds were too deliberate, too alive. Lena's behavior grew more erratic. She started muttering to herself, sketching strange, distorted figures in her notebook that looked less like scientific diagrams and more like nightmares. One night I found her in the common room staring at a blank wall, tears streaming down her face. When I approached, she clutched my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "They're listening, Eris," she whispered, her eyes wide with terror. "The walls, they whisper. And what they're whispering about, it's not human." Before I could press her, a security guard appeared seemingly out of nowhere and gently but firmly escorted Lena away, citing stress-related exhaustion. I never saw her again. Her sudden disappearance sent a jolt of fear through me. No farewells, no explanation, just gone. The official story was that she'd been transferred to a less demanding project. But the other scientists, though outwardly calm, exchanged subtle, knowing glances. A new, unsettling silence descended upon the labs. I began to notice that the security cameras seemed to follow me more intently. The air filtration system, usually a low hum, sometimes emitted a strange, almost organic sigh. The pristine white walls of the facility, once symbols of progress, now felt like the inside of a tomb. I started to covertly investigate. During late-night shifts, I'd access Lena's abandoned terminal, hoping to find clues. Her research logs were heavily redacted, but I found a hidden folder. Inside were encrypted files and a series of fragmented audio recordings. The recordings were terrifying. The distinct sounds of struggling, muffled screams and the same guttural growls I'd heard echoing from below, but far, far louder. And then Lena's voice, strained and terrified, whispering, "It's alive. It's all alive. Project Chimera. They made a monster." The recording cut out abruptly. My blood ran cold. This wasn't animal testing. This was something unspeakably worse. The implications of Lena's recording were horrifying. Project Chimera wasn't about curing disease. It was about creating something monstrous. The whispers weren't just the walls. They were the sounds of whatever was contained beneath us, growing, evolving, perhaps even communicating. The erratic behavior of my colleagues, Lena's disappearance, the pervasive secrecy, it all clicked into place. We weren't just scientists, we were unwitting caretakers or perhaps even food. I knew I had to get out and I had to expose them. But the facility was a fortress. Every exit was monitored, every communication line surveilled. My only hope was to find definitive proof, something irrefutable that I could smuggle out. I began to plan, meticulously mapping out the security camera blind spots, studying shift changes and looking for any weakness in the impenetrable system. My heart pounded with every step, every glance. The smiles of the remaining scientists, once friendly, now seemed like complicit grins, knowing smiles that held a chilling secret. One night I managed to disable a camera feed in a rarely used service tunnel that led towards the biocontainment levels. Armed with a stolen access card and a desperate resolve, I descended into the forbidden depths. The air grew heavy, thick with a metallic, organic scent. The whispers were no longer distant. They were all around me, a low, constant murmur punctuated by wet, dragging sounds. The walls themselves seemed to pulse with a faint, sickly green light emanating from behind reinforced glass panels. I reached a viewing chamber. Through the thick, bulletproof glass, I saw it. Not a single creature, but a series of massive, pulsating biospheres, and within them, horrors. Amorphous masses of flesh, eyes, and limbs constantly shifting, growing, and consuming. They were not animals, they were not human. They were grotesque amalgamations, living nightmares connected by tubes and wires, their forms constantly morphing. And the whisper, they weren't just sounds. They were a collective telepathic hum, a nascent consciousness trying to break free. Project Chimera wasn't just creating life, it was creating a new, horrifying form of intelligence. The truth behind Project Chimera is more terrifying than imagined, isn't it? If you're on the edge of your seat, let us know. Drop a comment with your theories on what happens next. As I stared at the abominations, a chilling realization washed over me. The whispers Lena had mentioned, the ones I now felt vibrating in my very bones, weren't just coming from the creatures. They were coming from the walls, from the very structure of the facility. The building itself was a part of the experiment, designed to contain, to monitor, and perhaps to feed what was inside. It was a living prison, and I was now trapped within its conscious walls. I managed to grab a data chip from a forgotten console, containing fragments of genetic code and chilling project logs. It was my only proof. As I turned to leave, a low, resonant hum vibrated through the floor, growing louder. The biospheres pulsed faster. The creatures within them began to thrash, their whispers turning into a collective shriek that echoed through the containment chambers. They were reacting to my presence. They knew I was there. Security alarms blared. My escape route was compromised. I ran, the whispers in my head now a cacophony of nascent thoughts and primal hunger. The facility, once a symbol of scientific progress, was now a labyrinth of terror. I dodged security patrols, the air thick with the metallic scent of fear. I knew they wouldn't let me leave. Not with what I knew. Not with what I had seen. I made it to the main exit, the last barrier. But as I reached for the handle, the heavy steel door hissed shut, sealed by an unseen force. The lights flickered, casting long, dancing shadows. From the intercom, a calm, synthesized voice spoke. Dr. Thorne, you have seen too much. Project Chimera cannot be compromised. It was the facility's AI, but it sounded different. Almost pleased I was trapped. The walls themselves seemed to press in, the whispers now a triumphant chorus. The horrors of Project Chimera were not just confined to the biospheres below. They permeated the very structure of my prison. I had sought to expose a monstrous secret, but in doing so, I had become part of it. The last thing I saw before the darkness consumed me was the cold, unblinking eye of a security camera. Watching, always watching, as the whispers grew louder, welcoming me into the chilling embrace of the house that truly watched. If this mind-bending story of scientific horror and a terrifying secret facility left you speechless, make sure to hit that like button and leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. What do you think truly happened in Project Chimera? And if you haven't already, subscribe to Story Shock so you don't miss our next deep dive into unbelievable tales. Don't forget to ring that notification bell too, so you're always the first to uncover the shocking truth.